Live from the Motor City, all the way to the Volunteer State. It's time for the Reckless Speculation Podcast, where we recklessly speculate the latest news in the world of sports. From college football to NASCAR, we've got you covered. And don't forget to stick around for the world-famous Bet Your Nuts, where we will give you your best bets to make the most money. Now sit back, grab your favorite drink of choice, and join Robbie Davis, Raj Mehta, Brandon Chain, and Tom Sloan. It's showtime. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Reckless Speculation Podcast. I am your host, Tom Sloan, tonight. And tonight we are talking college football. That's right. It's, for some, maybe the first or the second best pastime next to the NFL. I prefer the NFL myself, but you know what? That's neither here nor there. But we want to welcome everybody that's tuning in tonight or listening. And again, we want to remind everybody to go ahead and like and follow us all on our social medias. We've got them all. I do have to replace that little bird in the lower left corner because it ain't the bird anymore, folks. It's X for whatever reason. I don't know. But then, of course, what are we drinking? I know what the fellas are drinking. It's Jack. That's right. Jack Single Barrel Reckless Speculation Podcast is always powered by Jack. And another fun fact, a little twist I'm going to throw into the intro here. Did you know September 19th, obviously this is the day we're recording, it'll probably hit September 20th, but since it's September 19th, we're talking, what is today? Well, it's National Talk Like a Pirate Day. Arr, that's right, we matey. And we're going to bring on the co-hosts of this operation, Robbie Davis. Arr.
Hey, I don't have any pirate voice, but I will say I'm rocking one of my favorite pencils today. I'm a big pencil guy. This is from the Blue Ridge Inn in Georgia, B&B. Just a solid pencil, and I just do appreciate them.
Well, not many people using pencils these days.
Well, I make a lot of mistakes, and so I have to erase a lot.
Well, I think the kids are using mechanical pencils, but
yeah.
Other than that, not many pencils being used.
Not a lot of manual sharpening these days.
Probably not. But here's a guy that's about to come on that I bet he uses pencils at his work site or on the golf course. Of course, the little mini pencils.
That's
Brandon
true.
Chain.
Yes, the pencils I use do not have erasers, so that's. No, I'm sure yours has quite a big one on it.
The little itty bitty ones there. But I mean, last week was another fun weekend of college football. Obviously, this weekend is one for the ages, topped off with Ohio State and Notre Dame, which we definitely will be getting into a little bit later. But before we get this thing going, we have to always thank our sponsors to help us put this thing together, and is the one, the only Davis Kessler and Davis Law Firm. If you're in the Chattanooga area and you need any sort of law advice, you got a drunk driving, get into an accident, anything, this is the number to call. Go check them out, daviskessler.com. Hopefully I got that right this week, Robbie.
Yeah. Oh yeah, or if you're a cat and you get arrested.
Yes, the cats. I mean, there is a big run on cats getting arrested these days. You got to neuter and spay your animals, ladies and gentlemen. We got to do that. Don't forget about that. And of course, C&W Construction, our very own Brandon Chain. I think the pictures do it justice. Anything you need done, whether it's new build to outdoor patio, anything, you name it, they're gonna get in there and get you covered. Obviously in the greater Nashville area, and I'm sure a little bit further out. So give them a call. Go follow them on Facebook.
Hey, not too much further though. You would think, as long as we can remember, and I try to get him to, hey, can you come do a project on my house? Oh, no. 2 hours is way too far. Can't get him to do anything. I'm just like, come on.
Hey, he's got enough work. He doesn't need your work to do either. And that's out of his range. That's out of his range.
Dude, like I told you, it's more my subs traveling that far than myself. I don't mind it, but
it's tax write-off. Just write them off.
And of course, we're missing one fella, Raj Mehta. He'll be here shortly. Last night in the meeting, it was 9, and then it changed to 9:15. So we're sitting here just about 10 after 9. So we expect him here within the next few minutes. So when he pops in the green room, we will make sure we get him on. But let's get this train on the track tonight. We're going to talk first about the wild game that took place in Boulder last Saturday night into Sunday morning between Colorado and Colorado State. This game was hyped from the jump. You had Coach Novell kind of taking a slap at Prime, talking about he was taught at a young age when he's speaking to an adult to take his hat off and glasses, and that definitely fueled what is an already pretty strong rivalry. Obviously, this made it a little bit more. So the game gets underway, and right off the jump, you had a lot of cheap shots being thrown by both teams. And I think the refs, and we talked about this yesterday, I think the refs kind of let this thing get out of hand, and they may not have been prepared for what was going to happen. I think everybody in America knew what was going to happen, except for this officiating crew, which I think the NCAA needs to do something about that. But Brandon, what do you make of the fact that these personal fouls just continued to happen over and over again? Is that a mark on the coach, or is it these kids just not being disciplined enough to know when they need to, pump the brakes a little bit?
Probably a good combination of both, but I would put more on the coach than the kids. I mean, that's their job. You got to shut that down. I mean, I get it gets chippy and you want to mouth off and, do your talking on the field. And just, again, and the refs, like you said, to your point, you gotta nip that in the butt quick, because it's only going to snowball from there. And that's exactly what happened until somebody gets hurt, seriously injured. And that's what we saw, which is very unfortunate. Mm-hmm. There talks of him being out for the whole season. So, I mean, that's just so sad, because he had a bright season ahead of him this year.
Yeah. He's probably their second best guy on offense and their number one guy in defense. So you're essentially, you're like taking Shohei Ohtani off the Angels in a sense that, that's the dynamic play that this guy has. Robbie, before the game even started, warmups, there was a lot of talking back and forth. Travis Hunter was kind of right in the mix of all of it. Shadeur Sanders as well. And I think that kind of triggered a lot of these Colorado State players. And to them, they felt a little bit slighted in this game. They came in at I believe it was 12-point underdog, which was
no 22 or something like that.
22. Okay, excuse me, 22. Which I think these kids kind of took offense to that being a rivalry game. I know well enough Michigan State that even when Michigan State has a down year, they just show up for these games. So the I guess the tempers started early on.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I'll echo Brandon's point. Look, there's adult coaches and there's kids playing a game. So that's the first thing. The second level is the refs have to have some awareness. They know game day is going to be there. It's a game day starts at 6 a.m. in Boulder, or maybe 7 a.m. I think they're Mountain Time, whatever time. I think they're Mountain Time.
It's Mountain Time.
So 7 a.m. They're there. Their hype train's there. This is Colorado State's players. They're one time of the year to be in the limelight. That anything, the first thing questionable, you throw a flag, personal foul, everyone calm down. We're taking control. You let them get chippy, and then the adults start encouraging the kids to do stuff that keeps you. That's how people get hurt, and that's the main thing about sports. That we're going to talk on our next show about injuries and these kind of injuries are like it's real. And these kids are they're not playing for free anymore. But if you're Travis Hunter, you're thinking, man, is no one going to protect me? I mean, at least I would be. I'd be like, look, what do I do? Because I've got 2 more years to play. I need better refereeing. I need better protection. And that's not a shot on Colorado. That's just a shot. The refs, I don't think were prepared for this moment. And I agree, Tom. I think the NCAA or the PAC, I can't remember what crew it was that was working it, but people got to get together. They got to communicate, and they got to say, look, this crew may not be ready for prime time, and let's fix this.
Right. So
prime time, play on words.
Exactly. So specifically looking at that penalty, it was dirty from the word dirty. The guy knew what he was doing, and this is a team captain on the Colorado State side who, he's well respected, and unfortunately, because of what he did, he's getting some death threats. But would you? If you were the official in this situation, was that hit egregious enough for an expulsion from the game? Because in my opinion, I think they should have probably eliminated somebody early on, and it probably would have tamped some of the emotions at that point.
Well, I think there needs to be some flexibility in the rules with college. Like, although I'm not a fan of the targeting rule, but if you can suspend someone a half of football for a legit, I'm jumping, you're jumping, and we hit helmets, and you can suspend someone for a half, I think you should be able to suspend someone for a half on something that looks intentional or egregious. And before I pass it to Brandon, shout out to Dion today, who said death threats are ridiculous. There's no part in this sport or any sport in general. It's a game we're playing.
It's a game.
It's not life or death. So shout out to Dion. I think he handled that with such class today.
100%. And Brandon, what is your take? Like, do you think if they would have set kind of the example early on and ejected that player, maybe some of the extracurricular would have subsided after that point?
Yeah, I think it would have. That's the whole point we're trying to make, is that, the refs have to really take control of the game, or it can get out of hand. And once you give, an inch, they're going to take a mile. So, and that's what happened. You should be able to review plays like that and go back, especially after someone gets injured, and be like, okay, that was definitely egregious, and we've got to do something about it. And not just let it fly with a flag. So it's ridiculous. It's getting people hurt already. And like Robbie said, we're going to talk a lot more about other injuries and different situations, but this is preventable. Preventable. That's the whole point.
The intent of that was to hurt him.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Brandon. Look, while the injured person's on the floor or on the ground, there's people in the booth. Hey, buzz down in your ear. It doesn't need to be reviewable. Just buzz down and be like, this guy's got to go.
Yeah, this guy's got to go, and that should be able to happen, and it could easily.
Sure.
Which would also in itself deter people from, doing stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, they definitely needed to kind of set the tone, and they didn't, and that crew should be held accountable for that. But outside of all the chaos and the noise, this was probably the game of the weekend. Colorado State gave Colorado everything they had, and it took an unbelievable 98-yard drive by Shadeur and the Buffaloes just to get an opportunity to tie with a 2-point conversion, and they hit the big tight end to make it, send it into overtime. Are we Robbie, I'll start with you. are we seeing an evolution of a superstar in the making, somebody of the ilk of maybe a Lamar Jackson or into that effect? Because the question coming into this season was, yes, Shadeur Sanders is going to be a really good quarterback, but how is he going to be able to handle the Power Fives, the bigger schools that have faster athletic kids? And I think all indications are he's stepped up and he's really shown that he can handle that. Are we looking at somebody that's a potential Heisman / top 10 pick here in the making?
Yeah, I mean the old cliche is the apple does not fall far from the tree is
Yeah.
so true here. Look, his dad, his prime time. I mean, that's his nickname. Like,
Yep.
like he was the ultimate sports entertainer and cocky, or I'd say confident, not even cocky, just confident,
He
and
backed
backed it up. And looks like his son's got every bit of the making of it. But the numbers for this game, well, the numbers for game day were ridiculous. It was 3 million people the last hour, which was their top rated September game since 2018, I think. And then at 2:30 a.m. Eastern, granted, I was one of these people that was asleep but had it on,
Yep, not me.
but it did 8.3 million views.
Wow.
And that's cable. That's not YouTube TV. That's a gigantic number. I mean,
Wow.
that's astronomical for that time slot, much less just college football.
That's the power of Prime.
Yeah.
We'll hashtag that, the power of
Yeah.
Prime.
So is he a Heisman candidate? Is he a Heisman favorite? Absolutely. Look, they're leading. They played Colorado State this weekend, and they're leading sports shows.
Yep.
We'll see what happens. Like it really sucks that Hunter is hurt for Oregon and USC because that may derail this hype train. But yeah, no, I mean it's not going anywhere. And I got some teaser. My final thoughts are going to tie into this.
Okay. And Brandon, talking about the upcoming games, and I think this the theme of this weekend, not only with Colorado, it's Notre Dame, Ohio State, is we're going to find out who they are. And there's going to be a lot of questions answered come Sunday about some of these teams that have come out of the gate really good. Colorado this week has to go to Oregon. Not an easy place to play. I believe they're a 21-point underdog. And then they go to USC. It's a tall task. But I think I think we've all been doubting from the even Vegas at the start of the season had the over-under wins this year at 3.5, and they're already going to surplus that. So there's been a lot of doubters, and they've really come to the plate and shown that, hey, we're for real. But this week's a different scenario. How do you see this game playing out? And will Deion Sanders kind of know what buttons and dials to push with these kids to get them going? Because last week against Colorado State, let's not sugarcoat it, it's not a good football team, and they almost lost at home. This coming Saturday, I don't think they're going to be able to get away with some of the mistakes that they made.
Yeah. So back to the 98-yard drive or 97-yard drive, whatever that was that Shadeur had. Let's just go ahead and say this. I mean, he is, as of right now, the most clutch quarterback in college football right now. I mean, and not only that drive, but he made several plays throughout that game that he had to make. They absolutely had to have to keep hanging on. So that being said, I mean, this team is a fighting team. I mean, even, in a bad game like that where they had a lot of hiccups and some mistakes, they still fought through and battled back. I don't think they're going to beat Oregon. I don't think they're quite ready yet. They're still working on their chemistry. They hadn't really played. TCU was a overrated joke, and that was a big hype game just to start with. And then We'll get to that in your bet your nuts. I don't think they're going to beat Oregon, but I think the game's going to be closer than what you think.
Okay. Raj, welcome on. And thank you for joining today. I know you had a rough day. We discussed last night, but we're still hitting in on the Colorado State game. And I'm going to come back and ask you this question that I just asked the other guys.
Okay.
Shadeur Sanders, the 98-yard drive he had late in the fourth to tie the game. What does that do for, I guess, his standing as far as upper echelon quarterbacks in the country goes? Can we look at him? Brandon said he's officially the most clutch quarterback in the country. So far this year he's proven that. Do you now, since he's been put to the test in these crucial situations, drove him down, withstood a nasty targeting hit, got right up and made the plays? Where do you see him right now in the eyes of Heisman voters and maybe potential draft pick number?
I mean, well, first of all, I'm sure you guys talked about the number of eyeballs that are on Shadeur right now. And I don't know if you guys touched on the ratings or not, but that was absolutely insane.
Mm-hmm.
The 5th most watched time slot ever on ESPN. So that certainly helps. I mean, that's free propaganda. I said this about USC, and they're very USC-esque. You can rebuild skill position, elite talent and speed in a year off season. What you can't do is create depth, especially across the lines. And they haven't had any sort of threat whatsoever coming after Shadeur. He's had all day to throw. Now, he is very Caleb Williams-esque in that, he's most deadly when he stretches the play out, steps up in the pocket, rolls. He did the same thing with Jimmy Horn Jr. against TCU. Now, what I also don't understand is Colorado had not scored a touchdown on 8 straight drives. CSU goes into basically a prevent, which prevents you from winning. That's all it achieves. They were dropping 7, rushing 4 almost the whole time. You give a guy like that, you're not getting any pressure all day. He's going to find the holes. And he found the holes. Don't get me wrong. I think he's elite and with the right team. And, Caleb goes number 1 and, he comes back down to earth a little bit like we expect. I think some of us do with Oregon and USC looming. He's going to find himself probably drafted. He went from this guy will never play in the league to a first-round consideration, and he'd probably go to a decent team. And if that's the case, I mean, it's certainly sure that he has it.
Yeah.
And he's got the guy who invented it. So
as his father,
that's just straight up swag. I mean, Dion can't touch anything in the world respects him. I mean, you just can't not. I mean, he backed it up. And so, there's just a lot of things at his disposal that are great, but the jury's still out, in my opinion.
Yeah, but so far, I think my comment prior to the season starting was, I think he's going to be good, just not yet. And I might be eating crow a little bit. So like I said a few minutes ago, we're going to learn a lot about who they are and a lot about other schools coming into this weekend with just an absolute loaded slate of games. But moving on to the other big game of the night, which turned out to be kind of a big dud. And sorry, Robbie, for that. And that's Tennessee going down to Florida, where they haven't won in 20 years. The Swamp has been somewhat of a kryptonite for the Volunteers. Joe Milton looked a lot like the Joe Milton that I knew that played at Michigan. He just missing receivers, albeit Florida, they really brought a lot of pressure on him. And so I'll kick off with you, Robbie. What's your feelings after that game, and kind of what's your feelings moving forward with your Tennessee Volunteers?
I don't want to overreact because I think this is the most lackluster field of college football teams that I can think back to that. I think it was the 07 LSU team that won with 2 losses against Brandon's Ohio State team. I think that was that. This is what this year reminds me of. It's a loss on the road at the Swamp. Look, it's been the Vols' Achilles heel my entire life. 20 years since we've won down there. I think we've only won down there once in my entire lifetime, and I'll be 40. So, yeah, it's just bad. And the troubling thing is so as Tennessee flew onto the map last year. This is now 3 years in the three road losses in a row, albeit very difficult environments. But it does beg the question of, when you spread the field out as wide as Heupel does, can everyone hear the play and can they get on the same page? If there's any, so it's basically you run when you're running fast, because Tennessee doesn't huddle and they rely on hand signals and, cadences. Like, if you can't hear, is that just a built-in disaster for that formation? And so that's to be seen. But yeah, I mean, I think it was just kind of I think most of us picked Florida to cover at least, but this was just it's the Swamp at night. Those games are tough to win in the SEC.
Brandon, this now is his 3rd road loss, Josh Heupel, and you know it as well as I do. If you're gonna want to compete for championships, you got to go on the road, and you got to win these big games. Last year they lost to Georgia, they lost to South Carolina, now they lose to Florida. Is there a reason for some concern in Knoxville that maybe Heupel's team doesn't have what it takes to go on the road and compete with the big boys?
Yeah, I think there's good reason for concern there. They look like they weren't ready for the big show. I mean, they look like a completely different team. I mean, and Florida is not a good team. And I get it's a tough place to play. And to Robbie's point, I'm sure there was a lot of things like that going on. But as the head coach, and knowing the SEC and knowing that these places are tough to play, and predicting what's going to happen as far as crowd noise and that such, you got to get your guys ready for that. And they just looked lost out there half the time. I mean, even Florida's offensive line is terrible, and they were pushing them all around. I mean, they were running the ball all over them. Mm-hmm. It's just exactly, Robbie, outcoached.
Yeah. Well, out prepared.
That was me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Well, exactly. That's exactly what happened. They were completely outcoached, because Tennessee's a more talented team overall on the field.
Well, sure. I guess this is a general statement, but these primetime games are, I think the home team kind of has the advantage, because the road team just wants to get out there and get right to it, but they got to sit back and watch the early games, and they hear the crowd and they see all that. So I think the home teams kind of have that momentum going in.
Over the weekend, we saw it in college and the NFL. It was hot as hell in Florida over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. No, it was. Well, and then, you got this whole, Tennessee hasn't won in 20 years and blah, blah, blah. And they come in as a favorite, just all this, pressure and hype. But again, that's up to the coach to get these kids ready for that. So
100%.
So one thing I wanted to state about this game was, I was very impressed with Florida's game plan, and it was pretty simple. I mean, they were going to smash them in the face and grind them up on the ground, which they did. 172 for ETN. Total, they had, he had 183, or they had 183 total, 3 touchdowns, 4.3 yards per carry. But really defensively, I was wondering, where was the Joe Milton that we saw against Clemson, because everybody kind of presumed that would be the Joe Milton we'd see all year this year. I know I did. I thought he had turned the corner. One thing that I saw was, I know Brew McCoy well after his transfer from USC. He's not a guy that's going to create separation, and they're really missing that with Jalen Hyatt and other guys. Last year I looked at the Clemson game, and Squirrel White, he had 9 for 108 in the TD, 3 for 68 this game. And Ramel Keaton, they're two game breakers, really, in my opinion. I think Robbie would agree. Two guys that are speedsters and take the top off the defense. 4 for 76 in a TD last year in the bowl game, 3 for 39. So really what I'm getting at is Florida kept everything in front of them, and their secondary was outstanding, particularly Jason Marshall Jr., the DB. He was all preseason SEC defense. I think it was like third team. But they had a freshman safety. I wrote down his name, Jordan Castell, and he was everywhere. 10 tackles, 1 pass deflection. He was just the antithesis of the Tennessee safeties, who their tackling was just awful, especially that one dude on the 72-yard run. I mean, it was bad. And yeah, for Tennessee, it was 1 or 2 plays that they lacked fundamentals on and they didn't make, but Florida did make them. And then you look at a guy like Ricky Pearsall, who, on the stat sheet will be fairly modest, but it's a guy who, I can't remember what they said on TV, but what percentage of his catches go for first downs and touchdowns. He's just a guy that makes plays. And they had guys that came up big all night, whereas UT did not. And we have a thread where they joke around about these wide receiver screens. And, a lot of that was Florida keeping them out in front. But what happened to the Joe Milton who's throwing 25-yard outs with the flick of the wrist? I didn't see anything like that. And
that's how he was at Michigan.
Yeah, and just and Ross, your point, just real quickly. Yeah, Tennessee scored first 7, got scored 26-0, then outscored them in the second half. But this is the third game in a row where all 3 teams have played a 2 deep safety, essentially a prevent, and they're saying none of this deep stuff, none of this deep crosses, that we're not giving you that. You're going to do wide receiver screens over and over and over again. And they're just waiting for mistakes or just one incompletion here, and then the sticks change. And so we'll see if they get better at that or not, or if it's going to be a long year. But the it's going to be interesting to see if this is how every team plays them the rest of the year, and if we still have problems with it.
I think they laid down the blueprint to, how to defend against him.
Austin Peay really did it, and then Florida kind of copied it.
I'll stick with you, Robbie. You're the SEC guy here. It's been lackluster. Georgia has not impressed anyone. Alabama is in shambles with their quarterback situation. I mean, you might be looking at Ole Miss as your potential best team right now in the SEC. Is this an anomaly that there are so many struggles early on in a conference that proclaims them to be, the cream of the crop in the country? Is there is this the I guess the question is this NIL at play here, where the SEC doesn't generally get the best of the best anymore?
I think this is a spreading out of quarterbacks is what I think it is. I think if you still go down the trenches, the SEC still has the best players. But Tom, I'll push back on you.
And a lot of those Bama QBs, they all sucked.
Yeah, I think LSU is the favorite in the SEC. They have 0 losses. They were ahead of Florida State, had a bad half. They looked really good against Michigan or Mississippi State. Ole Miss, though, I'm not going to spoil my pick there, but yes, I agree. Ole Miss looks good too.
Yeah, I mean,
but Georgia looks mediocre.
Yeah, I mean,
the whole East is. Missouri actually looks pretty.
They got a good kicker.
That was the game of the year, the game of the weekend, if that tells you anything. I said this real quick. This weekend to me was about teams that could have stamped their position on where they were in the polls and they failed to do so. It was ugly, and they were letdown games. But Texas, Florida State really should have lost if BC didn't have 17, 18 penalties for 130 yards, a la CSU. Georgia, slept through 24-14. Michigan, JJ Heisman had 3 picks. There's just a number of games where, Penn State 30-13 at Illinois. The defense had 5 turnovers. I mean, you should hammer a crappy team like that.
Yep.
So it's just kind of status quo. And maybe a lot of teams were looking ahead because obviously ahead looks good.
Yeah, and early on in that Florida State Boston College
is that a preview for the Tucker segment?
That was said. That was said that Florida State might be looking ahead to this week. But Robbie, you mentioned Mel Tucker, obviously right down the street from me. This situation, it is as fluid as it's going to be. The allegations obviously came out last week. A little bit before that, we all know what's going on. MSU basically tells Mel Tucker yesterday that, yep, we're going to be firing you for cause. Mel Tucker comes out today with a seething 6-paragraph rebuttal, in a sense, basically accusing the woman of kind of violating her rights, or his rights, kind of like confidentiality rights. So it looks to me like Mel Tucker's putting his gloves on here, and he's going to fight tooth and nail with the university. Robbie, since obviously everyone knows you're the lawyer here, and it says so on the screen, what does it mean that they're going to fire him for cause? For all the peasants in the room, myself, that might not be sure what that means, educate us.
So in a nutshell, so you have a contract, you have a term of years, you have a compensation, and if you are fired for, like, you can get fired for, I don't like you, we don't get along. You can get fired for almost anything that is not discriminatory, retaliation, or whistleblowing, those kind of things. But if you're not at a at will or at work state, then they may have to pay your contract. So I'm not sure on the ins and outs in the what Michigan does. They're a high union state, so I would guess that there's probably a lot of power for employees.
It used to be a right to work, a no fault state, basically. Now it's changed.
Yeah. So, but anyways, they've got this contract, so it's terms and conditions. So if they just fire him because they don't want him to work anymore, they're on the hook for his contract. You'll see that across the country with coaches. If you're firing them for cause, that means the employee did something that caused the university to fire them for the good of the university, the good of the public good. Most of these universities are public universities, which means there are the same protections if you're I'm a police officer or I work at the clerk's office. The government has the federal government works different and the state government works different than a private employer. All that being said, in our meeting yesterday, I said I thought Mel Tucker gets 60 to 70% of his money. After seeing this public statement, I'm jumping it up to 75, 85%. I think if it's true what his lawyers are saying, he's got them by the
short and curlies.
Yeah, because the facts haven't changed. The university policy hasn't changed. Nothing has changed except the public perception. And so public perception does not change university standards. University standards change public perception.
Right.
And that is where they are going to fall on their face is if you knew and you didn't do anything, and then all of a sudden the public knew and now you changed your stance. And so they are in a based on what I've read to date, and obviously things are leaked at different areas. This is fluid, very fluid. very dramatic.
Mhm.
But if I'm a lawyer on each side, I'll take Mel Tucker's side on this one as far as what I'm going to get paid.
Brandon, one of the things that Mel Tucker accused Michigan State University of was knowing the full scope of this story in March.
Mm-hmm.
But yet they chose to, I don't even know if keep it under the rug is the right statement here, but they chose to keep it kind of under wraps until, within the last couple of weeks.
Right.
Does that maybe kind of put the onus on the university for kind of failing, not only failing their depleted reputation, but failing the kids on the football field, because clearly they didn't know what was going on. They're not going to know, what's going on behind the scenes. They're only focusing on school and football. Does this kind of paint or shed a light on a bigger problem at this school?
Absolutely. Just like Robbie said, I think once the public got word and it was leaked. So from what I understood, and I could be completely off on this, that it was supposed to be a confidentiality hearing, like it wasn't supposed to be leaked. And then once it did get leaked by her, supposedly, then that's when the university is trying to save face here and be like, oh, well, we got to put our foot down and do something. It looked like they weren't doing anything. They were going through the procedures, innocent until proven guilty kind of deal. And now it's, oh, yeah, well, because the public knows, you're fired. Yeah. So Mel Tucker, I'm with you, Robbie. I think he's got a hell of a case here. And I think he's going to get upwards of 80 to 100% of his contract after this.
And don't forget about every advertiser that MSU sold for this football season. They sold them on a bill of goods if they knew they were false representing themselves and what was going to happen. They should all have claims also.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. No, but to your point, Tom, they need to clean house there at Michigan State from the top
to
down.
bottom. Top to bottom.
Top down. I mean, they've got to start all over. It's awful.
Another thing that he said was he claims, and of course these are all his words, and who knows what's right from wrong, but he claims that he had a medical condition that he wanted to
take a medical leave,
take a leave of absence on, which obviously there's some mudslinging, and they're going to want to have as much evidence as they can to make their story look good. So, but yeah, I mean, we've got a local guy, the Detroit Sports Radio. I won't mention names. Not a big fan of him, but he was always a big Mel Tucker supporter, and he came out yesterday very, very vocally and admitted that he's the worst thing basically that's ever happened to the school. He's the biggest fraud, and this is an absolute huge Michigan State Spartan slappy, him and his co-host, and they both are on the same page that this has just been a complete disaster, and they need to cut ties.
If that one page document that was released today, if I had to highlight one sentence that would make MSU be terrified, would be, I cannot wait till we get to the discovery phase of this case, because you have Mel Tucker, who has agents, lawyers, everyone, every step of the way, against a bunch of college administrators, no, highly educated, very smart, but not necessarily savvy. And we've seen this with Gordon Gee. We've seen this with, good God, how many UT athletic directors has Tennessee fired? This is the mismatch in this realm.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, two things legally quick, and Rob, you can touch on these. Number one, it was so self-fulfilling in terms of MSU's enforcement of this agreement. When Mel Tucker basically said he was denied due process, which I agree with him, and he called, the allegations and the process a sham. Michigan State turnarounds and says, on the strict letter of the law and the contract, you are violating the good faith of this agreement, basically by talking shit about the contract, which he's being honest. So he can't say a damn word without them claiming for cause. They're desperate and they're throwing things at the wall. And the key here in the morality clause is a term called moral turpitude, which has never legally been defined or delineated. Its roots were in the 1800s in immigration law between the U.S. and Canada. It's been addressed. There was a case like 50, 60 years ago that basically used the words vileness, baseless, just depravity, never before seen by man. And it's kind of evolved to be, conduct that would shock the fellow man in today's society. According to
I think the words were, I can't define obscenity, but I can tell you when I see it.
Or, in this world of sexting and whatnot, is anybody like shocked that this happened?
No.
I don't feel like this is whatever moral turpitude. And really, it is all a leverage game. It's clear they're going to part ways. And the question is, who's going to have to, are they going to have to pay more or pay less in this based upon whatever adjudication happens? Robbie, what would be next? Would it be courts? Could it be a mediator? Did the contract provide for that?
I honestly think I think it's already settled. Honestly, I think it's at least within $5 to $10 million. I think it's Tucker trying to save face through publicity. Tucker wants a new job. Michigan State wants to get a new coach because at the bare minimum, according to what I understand, Michigan State violated his due process under the state government laws. And so you can put him on leave and you can have a hearing, but to fire him before your administrative hearing, that violates your own policies. And then so thus you have predetermined the hearing to which you host. And so I think it's already, so best case scenario, I think it's already settled. It's just people saving face. If it comes worst case scenario, Mel Tucker's attorneys file an injunction and you seek to remove everyone from the whole Michigan State system that has already predisposed this hearing that you have to have. And then you've got to whatever that backup policy is going to be, and it's going to get real ugly. So, I think that, I can't imagine it's not settled. I just can't imagine.
And there are confidentiality agreements in place, and we all believe, conspiracy theory wise, that MSU leaked this prematurely.
Sure.
It's no doubt they wanted to get rid of him, and then they delayed for the court of public and legal opinion to see which way this would go. And, one thing that Tucker said, he demanded an investigation into the leak itself, which he has a right to do so. And I don't believe that's happened. So, this is just both sides posturing, and something will happen. If a guy says he was going to go on FMLA and then he kind of intimated that he didn't, and then he jerked off, or did he jerk off? What is it going to FMLA after he jerked off? I don't know. But FMLA and jerking off are not good for getting new jobs. About the only place he can go.
Would there be a non-jerk-off clause in the next coach's contract?
Yeah. Saban could hire him as a DC as Saban's next project. But other than that, dude, he better get enough money because this career's over.
Yeah, let's say you get 80% of $95 million. That's still 70 something. I hate math on the fly. That's a lot of money for the coach, but that's also a lot of money for the university, which they wanted this done anyways. That's still $20 million they still saved.
Well, that kind of leads
deal for sure.
That leads into my next question, and Brandon, I'll ask you. I think they jumped the ship as far as it goes by throwing all that money at him. Clearly, this program, this university, is at the bottom of the barrel right now, next to Northwestern in the Big Ten, as far as the court of public opinion, as Robbie says, it's going to take a big coach to come in here and kind of revamp the program, which is going to cost a lot of money again. So where do you see the school going? What direction? Possibly just kind of getting a couple years down the road, let the dust settle, and then maybe throwing some money at a big coach? Or are they going to go for a home run, right off the gate?
I don't think they can afford to go for another home run right out of the gate. I think they need to set fire on everything and then let the smoke clear before they even consider rebuilding, and then use the proper NIL channels and transfer portal with somewhat of a better proven coach. And I don't think it necessarily has to be a big splash. I mean, like somebody like Matt Campbell, he's not working out so well at Arizona State, but he's a great coach. I think players coach. Somebody like him who's complete opposite of Mel Tucker could be somewhat refreshing, and then you've always got your new guys. I know Brian Hartline's name was thrown out there as a potential head coach.
I think
that guy's going to get the Ohio State job shortly.
Yeah, I was going to say, if he goes to Michigan State, I won't be real happy with him. But
I think there's a guy on this list. There's a guy on this list who's got Michigan ties, who might have a little bit of a sketchy reputation from what we heard on this offseason, but he did wonders at Michigan State. Roll the boat, baby. I think PJ Fleck could be somebody that they could look at. Has kind of a good name, we'll say. Could be good for recruiting. He's a good coach. I don't think he's really done a whole lot at Minnesota. I don't know if that's his fault or not, but I think he could be a safe candidate for Michigan State to maybe go after.
I saw this. Tom, this is your neck of the woods. Is Michigan State a better job today than Minnesota?
Yes. I think so. School
resources, tradition, everything, basketball, overall athletically, yes. But I don't know. I was saying PJ Fleck, dude, you look at that guy. That guy jerks off on the phone, dude. I don't think
allegedly.
Well, no, he's got like 14 kids, so he ain't doing that.
Like a phone jerk. Yeah, he's got to do that before he goes in the bedroom. Otherwise, he'll have 15. Another guy, I like is Mike Elko, the Duke coach. But I think they go for a young, up and coming. That Dan Lanning trend and Kenny Dillingham.
I mean, we already had Tuck coming.
Hartline won't take it because
no.
I think he's got the Ohio State job when Day loses again to Michigan. Yep. Sorry. But somebody, maybe a guy like Mike Tressel, Wisconsin's defensive coordinator, Harlan Barnett, the interim head coach. I think he's considered the favorite.
Sharon Moore at Michigan.
Yeah, just get a young guy, and you got nothing to lose. It can't get any worse as long as you get consent. Like, excuse me, miss, may I jerk off here on FaceTime, please?
All right, we're gonna wrap this topic up. I think we've
Urban Meyer to East Lansing.
We ran this one into the ground. So, all right, fellas, we're going to move on to a new little bit of a segment here. We're going to give our top 5. We're not worried about the ESPN or the AP. Nah, we see with our own eyes our top 5. And Raj, I'll start with you. Give us your reckless speculation, Raj Mehta top 5 college football.
It's a blend between like teams that we talked about, like who are playing the best right now as it appears, and teams that, that are just kind of settling in, teams like Georgia, who we know are stacked on both sides, and they're just waiting for the quarterback to kind of fit in, win enough games, keep winning. Eventually it'll happen. So I started out with Georgia as my number 1. Number 2, I went with Michigan barely, only because they haven't shown a damn thing. They're literally drawing plays on their hands. Interim coaches, Harbaugh is going to have something in store for the rest of the country. I like McCarthy. I like the running game. Do they have the playmakers? Guys, again, take the top off the defense. I don't know. That's my question. But in the end, when I look at the trenches, I think that's the best set of trenches them in Athens and the country, and that's what I'm going to fall back on. Number 3, and not bias in operation, just based on what I've seen in the improvements, is USC. Number 4, Washington. People love seeing what Washington has done. They're not running the ball. They have great receivers and a good tight end. And Phoenix, they're throwing it 1,500 times a game. But we've seen this movie before, and he's gotten hurt. And if you're one dimensional in anything, I got to see more from this team, and I think USC is more talented top to bottom. And number 5 is Notre Dame. They are getting 3 starters back for this weekend. They're averaging something like 3 yards per carry on the ground defensively, 2.6 going into last week. They're a complete team. And with Estime, who is a bowling ball running downhill, and Hartman, who doesn't make mistakes and can make all the throws, that is a team to watch out for. And so those are my top 5. After that, OSU, FSU, PSU, Utah, and Oregon.
Beautiful. Brandon, what's your top 5?
Not quite as detailed as Raj throwing out the stats here, but let me follow that. Georgia, they haven't looked great, but they're definitely talented enough to be there. It's hard to knock them at this point. So I'm going to say Georgia. It was close with Michigan too. I've got them at 2. I actually have Texas at 3. I like their road win in Alabama.
I kind of forgot about Texas. My bad.
I think that's a pretty significant win. Quinn Ewers looks great right now. They're rolling. And then I have USC in Washington.
Robbie, what's your
top 5? I do mine by I realized we're doing top 5 instead of top 4, so let me add one real quick.
Top 4.
Nothing like live television. Even though it says top 5 all day long.
You looked at number 4 says top 5. That's where you got that.
Yeah, so I'm
doing this whole Samsonite thing.
I'm doing mine on my playoff predictor. So I've got my number 1 seed as the Trojans, number 2 seed is Texas, number 3 as Washington, and welcome to controversy, I've got number 4 LSU over number 5 FSU, because I don't think the committee has enough balls to leave the SEC champ out even in a down SEC year.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He has
I heard somebody bring that up. Like, is it feasible or possible that an SEC doesn't get a representative in the top 4? I'd be shocked if that ever happened. But
that'd be fucking hilarious, though.
Yeah. For me, my top 5 is, I'm just from what I see. Number 1, I got Washington. What they did to come into East Lansing, they scored the first 41 points. Yes, they're one-dimensional, but I think that could possibly open up the ground game later on in the season. It's no secret the Pac-12 is the best division right now in college football. Unfortunately, their last season as a conference in college football.
So Pac-10.
Number 2, I like Texas, and I agree with Robbie's sentiment there. That home win or that road win was really big going into Tuscaloosa. Although Alabama doesn't have a quarterback, as we all know, still you're going into a buzzsaw in Tuscaloosa, and that's got to count for something. Number 3, Georgia, you got to respect them, back-to-back champs. They have not lost. They have not looked good. Their defense is getting it done. Offensively, they've got a lot of work to do, like a lot of these other schools. Number 4, Michigan. I'll be the first to say these cupcake schedules, I think you're going to catch up to them at some point. No worries this week, Rutgers. Although Rutgers is 3-0. And this is not a game that they can sleep on. They can't look forward. They're going to win. They're going to win. But it's the same old Rutgers that we're used to seeing. And number 5, Ohio State. They put it together in the second half last week, 63-10, I think the final was. And will that kind of push to the next week? It remains to be seen. So
he said, "Stop it, stop it, stop."
So we'll see. And obviously, these top 5s are fun to do based on
what wins, dude. What are we gonna do?
It's like me trying to get my team motivated to play against Blake this weekend. Like they're just like, stop it, we got this. They're easy.
Well, there's been some teams that have been very questionable, as we said, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State this past week. But there's some other stats here that are pretty abysmal. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about our stats, folks. The reckless speculation, last man standing. We've combined NFL and college picks here. Ladies and gentlemen,
I was looking good until last week.
I'll be the first to admit I would love to say follow our picks, but man, we are failing you at the rip. The leading the way is Raj at 50%. I'm just below him at 13 out of 28, and the cool hand Luke and the I'm a lawyer are at 10 out of 28.
So the moral of the story is don't dress up for these photos because you can't pick games if you dress
up.
There is a lot of room for improvement. So moving on to the picks for this week, and we're going to start out with the big one of the week, taking place in South Bend, Indiana. Game day will be in the house. Ohio State travels to South Bend to play Notre Dame. This is your wheelhouse, Brandon. What are your expectations? What are you, I guess, what's your take? Do you think they have a chance? And will they be able to kind of feed off of the second half that they had last week?
They're favored.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, we're favored by 3. It's going to be
surprises me. That surprises me.
And that's going to piss Notre Dame off.
It will. I see this game going. I think Notre Dame kind of gets out early on us and try to control the line of scrimmage, but I think we kind of bounce back in the second half. I could see a field goal game here, so the line's probably pretty accurate. But I think we got a good shot. I saw a lot of good things come out of last week against Western Kentucky. I know it's Western Kentucky, but listen, they do have a pretty decent offense. They got a great wide receiver. I can't remember the dude's name. But to slow them down, that showed a lot. And then I really saw a lot of good play on the offensive line, which I hadn't seen the previous 2 games. So that got me a little bit excited. Yeah, that's the key on offense. And that was the first official start that McCord had. I think he threw for 2 touchdowns, like 320-something yards. I mean, like 68% completion that game. So he did really good. Not having that kind of shoulder peeking over him if he's going to be the starter or not. I think clarifying that helped ease his mind a little bit, and
I think that affects kids. I really do.
For sure, dude.
Knowing that there's somebody
so worried about messing up, and instead of slinging it and just throwing the ball and knowing that you're not going to get pulled for another guy coming in right behind you, you free it up, man. So he looked a lot better. So I think that was a good call to do that. But yeah, man, it's going to be a great game. I'm excited. We hadn't really played anybody else, so I don't even know what this team is against a good team. Right. So that's what I'm anxious to see. But we're soon going to find out.
And this is really for Western Kentucky.
Yes,
1,200 yards last year, over 100 receptions. They held him in, fairly in check, and they like to sling it, dude. Last year, their quarterback had 40 TDs and 11 picks.
Yeah.
So
I was impressed,
but
especially coming against Sam Hartman, who's they haven't really played. They played Navy, Tennessee State, and NC State, and then Central Michigan. I mean, they haven't really played anybody. So he's got some pretty good numbers here. I think he's 64, 90, 71% completion, and 13 TDs. So, I mean, they are slinging the ball. So that's why I was saying it makes me feel good matchup-wise coming into this game because we faced a similar offense. You know, obviously not quite as skilled players, but that wide receiver is pretty damn good. So it made me feel a little bit more confident coming into this game.
Robbie, these are two teams that you know I discussed earlier that we're not sure who they are, and I think we're going to learn a little bit about that. With that being said, who needs this game more?
So I picked Notre Dame to lose this game earlier in the year. I think Notre Dame needs it more because I think whether it's real or not, this Big Ten SEC bias and this alliance is a real thing. So if Notre Dame loses this game, they don't get in the playoff. There's no way.
Right.
Because so Notre Dame has to win. Ohio State doesn't have to win. With that being said, though, if Brandon picked Ohio State, I'm picking Notre Dame because Brandon sucks at these picks.
Well, Raj, you just picked up some tickets for the USC game here in little less than a month that we both will be in attendance for, which watch out for reckless speculation from South Bend. But you were talking about the ticket prices of that game not being as high as you had anticipated, mainly because of this game coming up this week. Talk a little bit about some of the ticket prices that you came across.
I mean, if you just look at a reseller site like a StubHub, if somebody from Notre Dame has season tickets, naturally the market, they may put them both up there because you can make a shit ton of money. And the market for Ohio State Notre Dame was 3 to 4 times that, with demand being way higher because the game is coming up. I got section 21, row 40 in Notre Dame, halfway up the bowl, and for like 300 or so. And I remember paying more for the Bush Push in 2005. If Notre Dame wins this game and USC wins out, then expect to see those ticket prices higher than this. But you were looking at $700-800 just to get in the building on some of the sites I saw. And
right now on Game Time, the cheapest ticket is $627.
That's insane.
Corner end zone, row 22. So,
and that's without freaking, fees and whatnot and all that.
No,
crap.
It's
they added.
One of the cool things about game time. All the fees, you can get the all-in price. So that's
you guys can thank Taylor Swift for that.
That does too. Yeah, you're right.
$1,800 to sit 30-yard line, like third row. So
who are y'all pick? Raj, who'd you pick in that one?
It's gonna be smash mouth ugly, and I bet on Notre Dame because I got them at 4.5, which was kind of what they were near opening. That was when it first came out. The more we talk, Ohio State reminds me like Alabama, and just run the fucking football with their 3 backs. When they actually run the ball, and Trayvon Henderson, and Mayan Williams, they fucking aren't stopped. And it's one of those games that I could see just smash mouth both sides, or I could see Ohio State just finally buck up and be like, all right, fuck you guys, we're coming here to play, and just run their asses over. I still think Notre Dame, I think they cover.
All right, so we're doing a +3 line. Notre Dame
I'll still
+3.
stick with Notre Dame, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a smash mouth Ohio State run your ass over type of game, because we're going to see a lot of stuff this weekend that teams have not shown yet.
So what's your pick?
Notre Dame.
Okay. I'll take Notre Dame as well.
Raj uses a lot of words to
I know.
to answer questions.
4.5, dude. Then the more I was thinking about it, and I looked, when Ohio State runs the fucking football, they just dominate. The first game, each of those guys had like 5 or 6 carries. But when
I just gotta keep our NASCAR.
Well, it was also we were still trying out for quarterback at that point. So they're trying to throw the crap out of the ball to see what kind of decisions these guys are making. And that's just not working.
Which tells me they're going to run the fuck out of the ball and shove it down their throat, which is.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's also, the offensive line looked so good. They were dominant. I mean, again, it's Western Kentucky. So do we really know? But they look to finally have some chemistry. So that gave me quite a bit of hope.
That's why I started waffling on the spot.
Moving on to the next game. Coach Prime with his first true test of the young season going up into Oregon to face the Ducks. They are a 21-point underdog. Robbie, who you got in this one?
I think they run into the Eugene House of Horrors. I think this is their first test. It's going to be raucous. Hopefully, it's not at 9 a.m. I think it's at 12:30 local, 3:30. 3:30, yeah, 3:30.
So it'll be 12:30 Pacific.
Play the games at night, fucking TV, dickheads.
I'm going to take Oregon minus 21. I think it's a blowout.
Brandon.
God, I was going to pick that too. Now I want to go opposite of Robbie. Man, I'm going to stick with freaking. All right.
Well, now I'm starting to hate my pick.
I see what you're doing here. God, this is a tough one. All right, I'm going to stick with my original pick. I got Oregon winning this one too. I think Travis Hunter being out too is a big hit, both sides of the ball. So, Oregon covers.
Raj.
God damn it! I forgot about Travis Hunter's lacerated liver. Fuck, because I was all set on Colorado, and because Oregon didn't do shit against Texas Tech, no pressure, nothing, and well, they did enough. I'm going to go with Oregon. I was all Colorado. I figured they can stay within 3 touchdowns, but I completely blanked on Hunter. I'm going to go with Oregon. Fuck.
Tom?
My bad.
Oh! I'm going lone wolf here. Give me Colorado to cover. I think Shadeur can keep it within 3 touchdowns. I think
touchdowns. Okay.
I think Prime is going to get these guys motivated enough to keep it, respectable. Oregon's going to win. I like Colorado to cover. Heading down to Tuscaloosa, roll Tide. We got Ole Miss coming in, the old nemesis, going up against Saban. Alabama, 7-point favorite here. Team doesn't have a quarterback that they can rely on. Going back to Milroe, they've kind of gone through the Rolodex of quarterbacks last week in the monsoon at Central Florida. Raj, start us off here. What do you got?
I'm going with Bama. At first, I thought that's a lot of points for 2 teams separated by 2 spots in the rankings. But I think Bama figured out in that ugly-ass game in the weather with Roydell Williams and Jace McClellan to run the fucking football. And that's one thing they can do. Ole Miss is not good against the run. Quinshawn Junkins is averaging 3.3 yards per carry after almost 2,000 last year. And they haven't exactly played the best teams in the world. I think Bama's going to smash mouth them and just kind of go back to basics and win by about 10.
Brandon Chain.
I like Bama too. I think they're getting their stuff together. So I'm going to agree with Raj on that one.
Robbie Davis, who you got down there at the?
When I hear Brandon say a certain team and my team's different, I'm like, yes. I think Brandon and I could try to put our collective thoughts together and still go 8 for 50. Not only do I think Ole Miss covers, not only do I think Ole Miss wins, I think this is going to be the worst loss in the Nick Saban era. I think Ole Miss is going to lay it on them. So
there's a little extra in the 10.
Yeah. Not only am I taking Mississippi, I'll take a money line, and I may. God, it's been so long since I've done this. what's it called when you
Parlay,
Parlay?
no, move the spread.
teaser.
Yeah, tease it to Ole Miss being the favorite and still like them to cover.
Ooh, ooh.
I'll also be sleeping under a bridge this weekend.
Well, that's not because of betting. That's because you're going to drink too much at a bachelor party. So I will follow suit, Robbie. I like Ole Miss to cover and win this game. I think Alabama's in shambles. I really do. They looked out of sorts. Milroe's got a better arm, but he's not accurate. And the other two quarterbacks they looked awful, just awful. And I think it's doom and gloom in Tuscaloosa.
For those of you who are old enough to remember the Chris Ricks era at Florida State, this is what this feels like. The empire is falling down.
Yeah, I believe that. Going down to Death Valley.
Wow, look at that segue.
The Seminoles, who barely squeaked by Boston College last weekend, go down and play Clemson. Florida State's a 2.5-point favorite. That's not saying a whole lot. Vegas doesn't have a lot of confidence in this game. Robbie, we'll start with you. Who do you like in this one?
And this is the damn ACC championship. Well, I'll take it. Miami's there too. Man, I think Davo's lost today. They're at home though. I wish we could pick over unders, but that's not part of the game. Give me FSU.
All right, Brandon Chain.
I'm going to take Clemson.
Yes.
I think FSU is not what I thought they were after watching last week. So I'm gonna, and Clemson did look pretty good. I know it was against Florida Atlantic or somebody, but they look like they're gelling a little bit more. So they're going to be geared up for this game. It's at home. Give me Clemson.
Whoever's on the losing end of me and Brandon this weekend, we're going to be batting about 20%.
Raj, what do you like in this one? The line's down to 2 when I last saw it. It is so ACC to not only have the game of the year, like Rob said, September 19th, but to have it at fucking noon. I mean, it's just such a joke. With the Pac-12 just behind that with USC Colorado starting at 10 a.m. But I'm going Florida State. I am not a Cade Klubnik believer, and I never will be. And until then, I'm gonna keep picking the other team. And you know, they slept walk last week, so hopefully they have the wake up call they needed.
I'm gonna take Clemson here. I don't trust Florida State. I think that was a telltale in Boston College on the road, and if not for the discipline issues that Boston College had, that score is different. You know, they had some pretty bad penalties there late in the game that cost them. So I really believe that Boston College would have come out on top in that game if not for the 18 penalties. So give me Clemson here in this game. Heading out to Utah, you got the Bruins facing Utah there. 4.5 spread for Utah, 3:30 kick Eastern time, which would be 1:30 local there. I'll start with this one. I like Utah. Utah's tough to play at home. We don't know if Cam Rising's playing yet, so that's interesting. But I still think
that Dick always does that. He practiced today, and most people think he will play, and Vegas thinks he will play.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't, this line will be less.
Yep.
UCLA can get after the quarterback.
I like the home field advantage here. Give me Utah. Robbie.
Yeah, Utah at home. I like UCLA. Chip Kelly, though, can always lay an egg. Utah's so tough at home. It's going to be early. Give me Utah.
Brandon.
Ditto. Utah.
Raj Mehta.
Yeah, this is just based on Cam Rising playing. If he plays Utah, either way, Utah obviously, but watch out for Dante Moore, the UCLA freshman quarterback. He is going to be sensational.
Belleville's own.
He is going to be sensational. And in 1 or 2 years, he'll be in the Heisman conversation.
I believe that. Absolutely. Heading over to Happy Valley, two teams that they did not shake things up last weekend, that's for sure. The Hawkeyes going into Penn State. Both teams very lackluster performances. Raj, who do you like this in the battle for the Big Ten?
Damn, it's going to be a night game with a whiteout. I'll take the under. Until Drew Allard shows me differently, Jesus, can Iowa score a point? I'm going to go with my gut, which I'm probably wrong, and go with Iowa based on defense and their back seven and just keeping that game in check. I have no idea how they're going to score. I have no idea about either of these teams too much, but I think it'll be a closer game than 14.5. It'll be 14.
Brandon.
I was going to say the exact same thing. 14. I like getting this half-point swing here. And, yeah, give me Iowa.
Robbie.
Because Brandon took Iowa, I'll take Penn State.
I will take.
One of us is going to break away, and one of us is going to be last.
Yeah.
I will take Iowa here.
Now I love Penn State.
2 years ago, I think Penn State wins, but I think Iowa covers. Yeah, but 2 years ago, Cade McNamara connected with Eric All late in the fourth to seal a win for Michigan when they played at Michigan at Penn State. So I look for similar playing like that between those two guys. I don't think they can score enough. And then on the flip side, I don't think Penn State can score enough. They need to focus on their run game specifically. But 14.5 is a high number. Give me Iowa to cover here. So that finishes up our picks for the college football weekend. Whatever Robbie's showing, it's probably all going to be bubkiss at that point. But moving on to our final segment, ladies and gentlemen, some final words. And Robbie, we're going to start with you. What's your final words for this evening?
So the most interesting thing that I saw today was as conference realignment went through and it's still going on, as you guys may be aware, SMU is joining the ACC, but they are foregoing television contract, I think, for 5 or 6 years.
6 years.
6 years. So in the 7 days since that's been announced, they have raised $100 million from boosters alone from a GoFundMe. They're trying to get to $200 million. They'll get there within the end of the month. There is
a wealthy private school in Dallas, by the way.
Yeah. So they're good. They've got a seat at the table. Those checks are gonna keep flowing. Wait for this to happen. Wait for this. Like once they get booster money and television money, look out for what SMU is gonna do. Yes, as Raj said, it's rich oil people in Dallas. Mm-hmm. Like it's about to.
Texas.
If I'm buying stock in a program, I'm buying stock in SMU.
Who was once a powerhouse with Craig James, Eric Dickerson, and the Gold Trans.
They were cheating before cheating was legal. Cool now everything they do, this is what we do. Like, yeah.
Exactly.
Brandon, what's your final thoughts for tonight?
Final thoughts. Man, finally we got a good schedule in college football this week. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. A little nervous, a little anxious, but I think my Buckeyes can pull it out, hopefully. So that's my final thoughts.
Raj Mehta, final thoughts.
2 things. Number one, it was great to see Eduardo Rodriguez of the Detroit Tigers finally come to Los Angeles. Pitched last night. He got to do that. He was the guy that turned down or activated a no trade because of family or something else, and wanted to stay with the Detroit Tigers other than, or he could have been on a team that's going to win 100 games and we sorely need him. But it was clear the Dodgers, even though they respect his family decision, didn't forget about it, and they commented on it. And he lasted 3 innings, gave up 5 earned, and JD Martinez, former Tiger, hit 2, including 1 bomb off of him. And they commented, a little bit on it, like they didn't forget. And so you finally got to pitch in LA. Eduardo, sorry, it only lasted 3 innings, not sorry. And then finally, the Bay Area schools in the pack, Arizona schools. Those are the only 2 regions that aren't ranked in the Pac-12. I can't believe it, dude. 8 of the 12 teams. That's like insane to me. That's never been the case, including 4 in the top 11. It's leave it up to us to do it in our final year. All top 5 teams in passing offenses. Now, this is in true Pac-12 form, are Pac-12 schools. So it's just it's nice to see, but could have used this type of showing throughout all the shit-talking BCS years and getting humiliated. But then again, it's early. So it's so Pac-12 to do it in our final fucking year.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the unfortunate side of it.
Well said.
I think the Big Ten and the Big 12 are going to benefit from them coming over. But my final thoughts for tonight are, as you can see on my thing, Harbaugh comes back this week. No more cutting the grass before the game. No more taking his kids to McDonald's at halftime, which he did on one of the occasions, which is such a Harbaugh thing to do. But I forget who mentioned it earlier. Their playbook definitely has been kind of limited, and I think as the season progresses, you're going to start to see, the chains come off, so to speak, in that offense. I believe J.J. McCarthy's as good as it gets. He had a bad game last week, but he'll be able to shake it off. He's got a good head between his ears. So I look for Michigan to kind of come out and open up the offense a little bit more. The defense has been real well. So it'll be good to have Coach Harbaugh on the sidelines because I think the kids really react well to him. So, all right, fellas, we got
Quick
another
question.
one under our. What
Do you like 24 on Michigan over Rutgers?
24? Yes. Yeah, I think they'll get it. They're gonna open it up a little bit more. I think you're gonna see
Oregon State at Washington State, by the way, a night game. Oregon State, Washington State, 2 ranked teams. DJU -3 on the road at Wazoo. That'll be a great game.
Yep. So we got awesome games
Bet
to look
your
forward
nuts.
to this weekend. Stay tuned for our NFL kickoff, which we'll be doing here shortly. We'll do a recap of my experience at Ford Field Sunday. Boy, that was deflating. But again, great show, fellas.
Hey, and just
And
to
we
predict,
planned this, right?
even though it's a lot to ask, Raj may be on time for this next show.
I hope so. I hope he is. I'm not holding my breath.
I do need a break to get up and walk around.
I'm not holding my breath. Again,
Back's killing me.
like, follow, subscribe on all the social media platforms. We love to hear your feedback. If you have any show topics that you want to cover, please do so. We love the interaction. And plus, it helps us further the reach that we're trying to get to. For Robbie Davis, Brandon Shane, and the one and only Raj Mehta, I am Tom Sloan. Look forward to seeing you guys here next week. Again, don't forget the NFL show. We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Reckless Speculation. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube searching Reckless Speculation. Catch us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We look forward to catching you right here next week with another exciting episode of Reckless Speculation.